All right, welcome back to Training Edge with Dave and Stu. We've been out for a couple of weeks. I guess summer vacation kind of got in the way, and for both of us, and it's been somewhat difficult to get these shows back on track. But I think now we're kind of back. And our last show was with Tiffany Bacchus, who was a registered dietitian. We talked all about nutrition for the summer, and she had a lot of really great insights. And if you want to check that out, it's up on YouTube on our channel. Today we're going to kind of continue that discussion a little bit, but mostly focus on carbohydrates and are they kind of the evil that people say they are? And as Stu and I were talking before the show, there's so many diets out there, whether it be paleo or keto or whatever the diet is of choice, whatever the diet is of the week. Some of those diets or eating patterns, really basically take pot shots at carbohydrate. And, when I was coming up, when I was, younger, in my
You're still young.
in my teens, in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And I was telling you this, I did a bodybuilding contest in Albany. I was trained for not very long. I think I trained for maybe 4 months and dieted down very quickly. And it was somebody who really wanted to put me in a show. And I was small, I didn't have a tremendous amount of muscle mass, but I was very lean. And at the time, carbo loading was sort of a big deal. I guess, or at least what I was reading in the magazines and what I was reading in books and what I was getting from my coach is that carbo loading was sort of the way to go, right? So load up on carbs and build that mass and then cut down, and then you strip away everything, and then what you're left with is basically lean muscle mass.
Right.
It didn't work for me. I found it very difficult, number one, to do because I was eating such a gargantuan amount of food for my weight. It was just very, very hard to pack on those calories or take in those calories. And then the dieting down, when I went through that process, I felt it was, there was a lot of deprivation there. And even though I knew I had to do it, it was almost like I resented doing it. So it wasn't something, I was doing it obviously for a show or for an event, but I found it very, very difficult. And I just wonder what other people's experiences are with carbo loading. Because I remember, at that time, it was like the big deal. It was everybody would carbo load. That's what you had to do. You had to carbo load. And I just didn't find that it really worked for me. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Interesting. I think most bodybuilders still, to a certain extent, carb load. Some do it on a very large scale. I think what we're talking about here, so people understand, is that when you take the carbohydrates, the loading meaning is that the body should be in a depleted state. And then when you start to increase these carbohydrates, which can come from what would be considered complex, which would be something like rice, pasta, bread, to simple, which might be honey, it might be apples, it might be some form of a couple pieces of fruit, bananas, things like that. What that does is when the body's in a depleted state, meaning that you've been dieting pretty strict, you've been working at depleting glycogen within the muscle. So what's happening is you're maybe not taking in a lot of carbohydrates to begin with during your training leading up to your competition, and you're depleting the stores through the weight training, which is anaerobic work, and it requires quite a bit of carbohydrates. When you add the carbohydrates in, whether they be complex or simple, what it should do is create a full effect to the muscle.
Correct.
So the muscle starts to look bigger, and because it's gaining size because of what little bit of water is in the system, sodium and potassium, it holds that inside of the muscle, and then the skin starts to have a more saran wrap type of look, a very tight wrapped skin look around that muscle. No water underneath the skin, a lot, hopefully some good vascularity is what you're looking for, and you just look really super tight. The thing is that it is very, very tricky because the body is organic, and what's happening is It's constantly changing. It's trying to compensate for many things. Stress, which will affect you immediately. Cortisol levels will go up. Heat, and then again, obviously, what it is that you're eating. So these things, trying to really find the right combination of carbohydrates to work with an individual, it is kind of tricky. I did it myself many times, and I found that I tried different things, because I tried loading with sweet potato, which worked really well with me. And then right before the show, I would switch over and try and do little things like maybe like a little rice cake. I saw some guys doing honey, some of my real good buddies, and people would try, and I would see different things being done. But the most important thing is to understand that I think you have to really be careful how much you put in. Because if you're in a state where you are relatively lean, but your muscles feel flat, meaning that you look at your muscles and there isn't really a pop to the muscle, but you see some vascularity, you don't feel tight, that's being flat. The muscle is not full. So as you start to add those carbohydrates in, I would always say to be very subtle with how you do it. And then you'll start to find a number that you can probably take in, whether it be 300 grams or a pound of potato over a course of anywhere between 1 to a few hours, and let the body just really start to very slowly fill out. It's tricky. It's very, very tricky. But
okay.
Yeah, I like it, but you have to, you again, you got to just be a little conservative with it. It is really kind of like a hit and a miss. And this is why a lot of guys cannot duplicate their conditioning every year.
Right.
It's very hard to do. And this is on the elite level. Yeah.
Yeah. So it takes a lot of trial and error. And, I'll say that, I'll kind of admit that in my case, it wasn't really trial and error as much as it was just trial. there was no error.
Right.
Because I did it once.
Right.
For a show, and then that was kind of it. And then I just went back into my regular strength training, but never really was never really involved with bodybuilding in that way, for an event.
Right.
But, so just a couple of questions. So,
Sure.
In talking about, carb loading and in talking about, depleting yourself, before loading, what's your thought on, now for bodybuilding, that's one thing. Bodybuilding is a sport. We know bodybuilders are athletes. What if you're an athlete in a different type of sport? What if you're what if you're a tennis player? What if you're a runner? What if you're, so are you going to do that necessarily? Is there any benefit to doing something like that? Or even if not loading, maybe just intermittently starting to take in more carbohydrates over a period of time as you're, let's say, as you're peaking, and then as you go into active recovery, kind of depleting those carbs. Is there any, I don't know of any science that has really looked at that.
Well,
but I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Interestingly, it's in bodybuilding, because it's extreme. All sports are extreme. Every single one, especially when you get to a competitive level.
Yeah,
you're working extreme. Sure. I don't care if it's volleyball, tennis, ping pong, right? So you're looking for the edge. You're looking for something, and you're going to try and take whatever it is that you can find that's going to give you that edge. You're going to try and maximize it. From a physique standpoint, where it's a visual type of thing, we're trying to maximize the visual look. From an athletic standpoint, where I think we're talking about more performance, because they really don't care what they really look like. I mean, I know a lot of these girls that play tennis, they don't want to look horrible, but they're not doing, or wouldn't, I think, engage in something like that for a look. It's more for performance. I think it's something you have to be very, very careful with, because I've heard some boxers talking about loading on carbohydrates. But one of the problems is when you do start a load on carbohydrates before a fight, and this is where you gotta definitely have to put some time in and figure things out. What's going to happen is you're going to create a very good pump. Remember, I was talking about feeling flat before.
Sure.
So now, as a fighter, the last thing you actually want is a pump. You don't want to get a pump when you're in the fighting, because when you get a pump, your muscles are going to shut down. They're going to get filled and gorged with blood, and they're not going to be able to continue to fire. So, even someone playing tennis, you're not trying to carb load to the point that you are actually taking away from your athletic performance. If you can get the carbohydrate to the point or take in what's going to enhance your athletic ability, meaning how you perform, that's something different. So I would definitely say you mentioned that intermittently increasing the carbohydrates over the course of maybe days and possibly maybe even weeks leading up. I think that makes a lot more sense. Right. I've never been a really big fan of a lot of marathon runners that eat all of this pasta and then go and run. It's actually, I think, very, very hard on the body. I think it's a very, very very poor approach. There are a lot of things that you can do to help to increase that performance. Again, you don't want your legs starting to feel heavy. You know, when you're running, you don't want your shoulders starting to burn because now you're catching a pump with all of the carbohydrates that you just pumped in the night before. Never mind the gastrointestinal stress that you're throwing on the system. So I would be very, very careful in how I incorporate it. But I still also want to say carbs are no one's enemy. You know, you just got to understand, again, all of these things. What type of carb is it? How a little bit of understanding of how the human body works, you know, climate, and am I getting ready to do something? What is it that I'm going to do? What is the carb breakdown ratio as opposed to a ripe banana and a green banana? You know, the breakdown is going to be different. One is sweet and the sugars are ready to be released and that gets into your system. It's going to hit your system differently. That green banana is not sweet. It's bland. And when you take it in, it's not going to react. It's not going to break down the same way. I mean, what do you think, Dave?
Yeah, no, I think that those are great points. And one of the things I wanted to focus on, which we just kind of hit on, was that, you know, you're saying if you're intermittently increasing your carbs over, let's say, the course of a mesocycle, right?
That was you, baby. You nailed that all the way. That was
going into that, right? So you're going into that peak and then you're dropping off, right?
Yeah.
In that active recovery phase. It's very interesting. So when you talk about the marathoner, okay, and you talk about, you know, the pasta dinners and stuff. First of all, I would say that most marathoners who are, I would say, elite are probably not sitting down to a pasta dinner.
Right.
Marathoners that are the ones who used to go to Tavern on the Green in Central Park, and they would have the massive pasta dinner. Now, part of that was tradition, part of that was fun and socialization.
Right.
But really the science behind it at the time, and it really came out in the 50s with Jim Fixx and all of those runners, was the fact that if I load my body up with carbs, what I will do is I will eliminate the depletion of carbs over the 26.2 mile run. Right. Therefore, when I get toward the end, I'm still going to have carbohydrates left in my system.
Right.
That being said, we also know that the pasta they're eating is not really, you know, a grain pasta. I'm not sure it's some white pasta that's considered simple carbohydrates and is burned up very quickly. Right. What I did find, however, because I have run several marathons, is that by intermittently ingesting carbohydrates throughout the race, that was extremely helpful. So instead of loading beforehand, having a regular dinner, whatever, the morning of, and by the way, nothing new on race day. That is a motto that I live by, because if you do something new on race day and it causes GI distress, you're done. Right. You can't do it. So you always have to practice these things.
Right.
And
absolutely. Yeah. No changes.
No changes on race day. But when you intermittently put those carbs into your system, and I did it, I used to do it every 5 miles, and it was in the form of like a gel packet, like just basically high carbohydrate, you know, gel. Yeah. It seemed to help a lot, because what would happen is throughout the next 5 miles, I was burning through those carbohydrates. Now, my body wasn't really going to protein at this point, because that would be after I was completely depleted. And I found that I never depleted. Now, that could have just been me, but my point is that doing something at the beginning, like a load for a marathon, doesn't seem to be, although scientifically it seems to make a lot of sense, it doesn't seem to make practical sense, because you're going to burn through that fairly quickly. Right. And the people who are eating it are not running 6-minute miles.
Right.
They're not running 7 minutes, because those people, they don't even stop. They stop for water. That's what they stop for.
Right.
And everything they have is on their body if they need it.
It's on them. Yeah.
So, if you're running a 14-minute mile and you're having a pasta dinner beforehand, well, congratulations, you finished the marathon. You know what I mean? So you got to look at it that way. But I think intermittently, though, spacing it out, I think was actually very helpful.
And I'd like to add to that. Interesting is that that makes so much more sense, because the whole, I think a lot of people don't realize is that, when you're taking in those carbohydrates at whatever weight that it is that you had, and you're taking it in every few miles, it's giving you just enough. You're looking for performance. It's the energy that you're looking for. If you were to take in 10 packets, let's say 20 packets, right? That might create more than what it is that you need in your system. And then now it's going to work it's going to work adverse. It's not going to work in the way that you want, because again, the packets are designed to give us, again, the quick energy, so that you can get into your system quickly, really not cause any GI stress, and allow you to continue to perform. The difference between performance and physique, visual looking, they're very close. There's a lot of meshing, interlocking, but you have to understand, I think it's important, how the foods that we take in, especially when we're talking about stuff like carbohydrates, how those things are going to how they're going to play out, and if you just go in and go crazy, you hear everybody, oh, I've heard that people are doing carbs, and you go in and you're going to sit down and eat a big plate of pasta. That's not gonna help you. That's not gonna work well at all. Yeah.
Not if it's about performance, and I think that's absolutely true.
No.
And this sort of speaks to the other comment you made and the other point, which is, they're not really evil. So let's take a look at some of the things that are out there as far as keto and paleo. I'm not against them. I'm not for them necessarily.
Right. But we want to let's be fair. Let's be very fair. Everyone's body is a little bit different, right? And if everybody today is talking about keto, paleo, no carbs, and all of this stuff, people that actually find that they might even might be doing okay on carbs, may question, why am I taking this if everybody's saying that this is something that I really don't want to be taking, or I should be taking a tremendous or a lot less of? So let's just touch on that real quick. As I said earlier, we have our complex, fibrous, and our simple carbohydrates, what we would call in bodybuilding. Complex being, again, things like rice, oatmeal, pasta, potatoes, grain, right? Then you have your fibrous carbs, which would be like your broccoli, your string beans, your
your green
peas,
vegetables,
vegetable sources, and then your simples, which would be your fruit sources. All three of those break down and are ready to be used by the body at different times, and that also depends on the metabolism of the individual. So your metabolism, what conditions or your body is under at the moment of taking it in, and what you're looking to gain from it is going to dictate which one of those things are going to actually work better for you at that moment and at that time.
Yeah.
So an old saying in bodybuilding is eat for what you're about to do, not for what you've just done. And
that's great.
That's a real old saying, right? And that one used to, I remember when I was competing as a kid, when I first started competing, it was like, okay, that was like, okay, I'm getting ready to do the workout, eat for what I'm about to do. When you're trying to get cut, you're not really trying to replenish that much. You're not trying to, I'm trying to get through that hard workout, get just enough. My goals have always been get just enough macronutrients in, and not too many excessive calories, because I'm trying to strip down. I'm trying to get cut. I'm trying to get harder. Which is a kind of general, but a very, very good way to look at getting in shape, because with everything post-workout recovery, and everybody talk about recovery, and I'm 100% recovery. If you look at my training protocol, number one on the list is going to be recovery. But if I'm eating enough food to get me into the workout, and then when I'm done with the workout, I'm putting in a tremendous amount of food in order to recover, I could be putting in a lot of the wrong things that I don't need if I'm trying to get lean. And what happens then is people are like, yeah, I'm training like an animal, but I'm not getting cut. And that's because you're replenishing more than what the body needs. So,
and you might be, and like you said, you might be replenishing with the wrong foods.
Right.
Because
right.
when you exercise, especially when you do a hardcore exercise, you feel justified
Right.
for having
I could have that. Right. Yeah. No, you can't have that. Depends
not if the the future event or the future thing that you're working toward is really important. No, you can't have that.
Right.
So,
you may need to look at it. And for everything that we're going to say and that we've always said on here, there's an exception because people are very different. And there've been times when certain things that I've done in the past that I've changed and worked better, which I would have never have done before. But, for instance, I like to tell people some of the best times, and I'm being very general with this, in order to take your carbohydrates are, if you're a person that gets up in the morning and are very busy and you need to get going and you have to move fast, that's a time you want to take that carbohydrate. You will want to take some carb early in the morning. Another good time to take some carbohydrates, and we're not going into the specifics of which one as of yet, would be either before the workout or again, it could be after the workout, depending on, am I trying to build size? Am I trying to get tight? I would never take in a lot of carbohydrates, even though I have in the past at nighttime. Now, there was also a, back maybe, I guess probably in the early 90s, a lot of athletes were also taking carbs late at night because I would do that sometimes so that like my body would glycogen load over the course of the night, so that when I wake up in the morning, I can get going. But I would only use that on a mass cycle. I was doing that more when I was training for size. And a lot of the old timers would wake up at 2 o'clock. They'd set the clock for 4 o'clock, and you get up and you have a protein drink, and you go back to bed. You wake back up again. You'd have a protein. So these are things. I mean, you talk about training regimens and diets. Man, I've done them all. I've literally, and it's taught a lot. I've learned a lot from it.
I'm sure you have. In those individual experiences are so valuable, and I think the point of everyone has an individual metabolism and responds differently is really, really important to get through. Right. And what I'm going back to the 1970s when the meat industry at the time was considered really the devil. Saturated fat was killing everybody. It was the reason for heart disease and blah, blah, blah. And that started, it was actually probably more like in the 60s, but that started the push against high fat, the push against fat. So then we started to see everything with no fat, right? Everything had no fat. We were like, that's great. I could eat a box of cookies that has no fat. This is great. With the all the trans fats and all the other stuff that has since been banned. But the important part here that I guess I'm getting to is that these things are cyclical. So I guess my point is, we're in 2020 and, maybe the most popular eating regimens are keto and paleo and something else. I think they're gonna fade over time because what ended up happening, so in the 70s, you're talking 50 years ago, we started the no fat. The no fat went from 70s to the 80s into the 90s. And then by the 90s, we started getting information that, wait a second, it's not really the saturated fat that's actually causing the heart disease. It's more about the polyunsaturated stuff. It's about the crap we put in it. It's about the processing of the food, not necessarily what's naturally in it. So then what we did was we said, oh, okay, so it's not fat, so it must be sugar. So now sugar is the devil, right? So sugar, what is sugar? Sugar is the base of carbohydrate. So now we're starting to see a huge push or a huge movement against that. And, I feel like we talk about it on the show all the time. It's all about balance. I don't feel, listen, for weight loss and, keto may work for some people. I've known many people to go on ketogenic diets and maybe one out of the many stay on it because it's a very hard lifestyle, very difficult. And you have to pee on a stick like every day to determine that you're in ketosis. So if you're not going to do that, forget it. The point I guess I'm making is that,
Mike Mensa. Mensa was one of the first guys to get into that back.
Oh, Mike Mensa?
Mensa.
So it's all about, I think, the balance, right? And
Yeah.
and for me, for my money, I think carbohydrates are needed.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying they need to be 60%, but I think they're needed,
Right.
and I think the brain functions on carbohydrates, it's
Yeah.
very, so I do think they need to be part of an everyday kind of eating regimen.
I love that, Dave, because I'm a balance guy, and regardless of who comes
Yeah.
out with what or whatever it is that they talk about, uh, a lot of things to me don't make sense. They make sense short term, but don't make
Mhm.
a lot of sense
Right.
long term, right?
Right.
So it's like when they started to, zero fat milk, 1% milk, 2% milk.
Right.
Why am I going to
Right.
drink milk that's been that's been altered from what the state that it was and go from 1%, 2%? When I was a kid, I was able to have the opportunity to have some raw milk. I still have a good connect to this day, and every now and then I pick up some raw milk and I do consume it. People can find 1,000 things to say bad about every single thing that we say that is correct. And that's just the way it is, because I could do the exact same thing, right? But what we need to understand is that if you're using certain things to manipulate a situation to create a scenario that is workable or that is doable, this is what nutrition is really and truly all about. It's about really understanding your body, understanding the human body, basic understanding how it works, understanding your body, and then starting to
Mhm.
understand the foods that you're choosing and how those foods work, whether they're protein, fats, or carbohydrates. And then when you look at this thing properly, you'll find that anybody that's really on and I've done a zero carb. My very first diet was a zero carb diet. So it was 3 days zero carb. On the fourth day you would load, which was how everybody dieted back in that time.
Is that a 7-day? Was it a 7-day thing? Was
Oh
it
yeah,
7 days?
yeah. You're doing it every day. You
I
would
think
do
I did.
You do 3 days
Yeah.
zero carb. On the fourth
Yeah.
day you load. Then
Mhm.
it's 3 days zero carb. Fourth day you would load. And
Okay.
what the load meant was that you would increase. I can eat as much carb pretty much as I would like. At that time I was very small, and I was a kid. I was 19. Fast metabolism, and it worked, and it did work, but it was very, very hard. Protein on the loading days were lower. On the days where I wasn't loading, the protein was a lot higher. And
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
and again, this was the diet that was in vogue. I trained at a gym called
Right.
Sheridan Square. And again, we had Mr. Olympia, Chris Dickerson. Chris had won Mr. Olympia. He was the guy inside the gym. There were some great bodybuilders that were in there. And when some of the other bodybuilders from around the country would come into New York, let's say for a competition, a lot of guys would train there, and they train at Mid-City Gym, R&J. These were the places where they worked out. But what I did find was when I went on those zero carb diets, and I would do them for extended periods of time, because you're trying things out. You're trying to see how it works.
Right.
Your body will eventually adjust. The adjustment took actually like 10 to 12 months. I'm not lying, for me to be able to function on extremely low carbohydrates. When I say extremely low, I mean like
How many grams?
Man, maybe about half a cup of rice, where everything else was just a large amount of protein, a large amount of vegetable. And I did this for a very, very long time. My strength dipped. I stayed with it. It was very hard, but then I did start to come out of it, and I was able to start to lift a little bit heavier. And it started to give me what it was I wanted, but then that stopped. It didn't work anymore. And then I started to add a little bit of carbohydrates back in. I found a sensitivity level. I found that, if I take this amount, I got a reaction that I really didn't want. And then if I took a little less, that was the reaction that I really did want. Actually, the same thing I did with fat. That I had taken the yolks out of the eggs and was reducing the fat for such a long period of time that actually when I could smell, if you fried an egg, I could smell the fat in the egg. I was able to detect the fat. And then when I did go back to start eating whole eggs, it just tasted so rich. It was such a rich flavor that I was kind of like, oh my God. It was almost like almost a little repulsive,
It's like any,
But understanding how you can manipulate these things in order to help you, because if you're going to go through a training session that is anaerobic based, meaning, weight training based, you're going to exert a tremendous amount of strength. It's going to be short bursts, maximum output. Guys and girls that are not using carbohydrates are going to have a harder time. Can you adapt? Yeah, absolutely. You can adapt. Will you be performing at your highest level? Well, you can only judge that if you do that for a while and then actually do the opposite. And then
do like a controlled experiment on yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And see, and then see how your body reacts. So, I'm definitely a person that thinks that there is a place for carbohydrates in the diet. I don't consume as much as I used to consume. And that's, I think, is also too because also I'm a little bit older. And I noticed that my body doesn't even need it to stay as full. My body can stay full with less carbs. So things have changed since I was 19 years old.
Yeah, and you're talking also about sort of eating for life, right? These are you mentioned in vogue. That's what was in vogue at the time.
Right.
Well, what's in vogue now is are eating regimens that don't necessarily focus on carbohydrates.
Right.
And that's likely to change. It's likely to change.
And I think it will change. One of the things, I don't know, but I would like to ask you, I'm someone that's never been big on sauces. So, coming from Central America, everything is pretty much cooked very clean, to be very honest. We don't teriyaki sauce. These are things that are not, it's not part of my culture. We don't really consume that. But growing up here, I remember people saying, "Oh God, I got to put ketchup on this, or I got to put that on this, or I got to do that, or I got to do that." And I was always like, "Wow." I mean, I never felt the need for it. And I have to also say too, I'm definitely not a person. All my life, I don't have a sweet tooth. I'm not a sweet tooth type of person. I love meat. I'm a carnivore. That's what I like. That would be my weakness, but it would never be sugar.
A chocolate cake,
Yeah, which I see a lot of people eat a meal and they have to have like something sweet with it.
Well, if I were to answer that, I would say, coming from Belize, most of the foods that were eaten were probably meat-based, a lot of meat-based foods. And if you weren't, as a young child, having sugary snacks and sugary sweets, then as you grew older, you probably had no desire for it. However, when you come to America, the portion sizes are huge,
bigger,
and the dessert menu shows up even before you finished your actual meal, right? So you're thinking. I mean, the mindset is, what are we having for dessert?
Right.
Because it's always the topper to the meal.
Right.
And I don't necessarily know where that came from, what the origin is, but I have to assume that a lot of it had to do with the fact that dessert made you stay at the table longer. It increased the conversation, the duration of the conversation, and the connection with the people you were with. And it was a way to share, right? So like you get a dessert, everybody gets a spoon. You kind of like, right? Okay, but the bad side of it is that with all of that, with that mindset, it's been very difficult to get out of that. We're now stuck in a place where dessert is something that's expected,
right?
And desserts are delicious. That's great, but they're also empty calories for the most part.
A lot of empty calories, and a lot of the sugar.
Yeah. And you mentioned something interesting when you said when you went back to whole milk, it was like so rich. The same idea happens when you go through sort of an eating regimen where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to swear off sugar. Right. I'm not going to eat a lot of sugar. I'm not going to eat as much bread, and I'm not going to eat my desserts and cookies and blah. If you go back to that, the first time you go back to it, you're like, oh my God, how did I eat this stuff?
Yeah.
So it's all about adaptation in that way.
Yes.
And I think that, we can adapt to anything, right? If we try hard enough.
Right.
But my answer to you is that, you're talking about two completely different cultures. One is really about decadence and gluttony, and the other was maybe more about like survival and you know what I mean. And so there's a much different mindset there.
Yeah.
And you still see it today. Still see it today. We could go through the overweight and obese issue, in the country. I mean, that's it. Yeah, but okay, we always kind of lead to that, but it's really true.
Yeah.
And so it's the eating patterns of people is just so interesting. I don't think it'll ever be something that will say, this is going to work for everybody. And
right.
We talk about all the ads that are out there and the stuff in the media.
It's suggestions. It's empowering.
But
it's just getting, I think it's just getting people to truly, I mean, again, just to understand that with all the stuff that someone talks about, whoever it is, that's great, that's in vogue right now, that's happening, that everybody's swearing by, that is working.
Yeah.
That's now, because you got to let it run a little bit. You have to say, okay, this sounds interesting, but does it really fit into your lifestyle? Is it something that you can? Is it something that you can do? What are some of the requirements? And there are always ways to transition over to something. Something as simple again as maybe I have the desire to want to try something like a keto diet, and I've been on a very, very high carbohydrate diet. Well, as I start to do that, maybe I start to cut some of the carbohydrates out of the diet and start to see how the body is responding by reducing some of the carbohydrates. I might find that the reduction without going extreme gives me everything that I want.
Correct.
And this is all I'm trying to tell people, because I think a lot of times people think, I got to go keto. I'm going to do food combining. I'm going to do the Pritikin. I'm going to do that. I'm like, listen,
joke.
Just start to understand, what's my lifestyle like? What are my goals? What is my lifestyle like? And am I willing to exercise and go through whatever it is I need in order to get it? Now, once you start to understand those three things, then you want to start to understand, okay, how does the human body work a little bit? All right, you wake up in the morning, are you hungry? Are you not hungry? This is how my body works. Oh, wow, okay. These are the foods that I like. What are these foods giving me? If I'm eating cream puffs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, obviously I'm not getting maximum amount of nutrients in order to give me whatever energy I have. And I might say my energy is good, but is my energy good in relationship? Is my energy good? And am I training hard? Because now that's different. Your energy can be good walking around eating cream puffs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but it might not be good anymore once you start to train for 30 minutes a day. You might find, wow, all of a sudden my energy is low. Well, obviously, there has to be something changing in that diet in order to give you what it is that you need, or the goals that you're trying to reach through that training. It has to match. And it is definitely a learning process, because as you start to manipulate things, you're not going to have maximum energy all of the time. Sometimes it's going to drop off, and you're going to say, oh, wow, you know what? I had half a cup less rice than I did last time. I might have to increase that if I'm going to do a leg day. Maybe I don't need it on, and I would do the same thing on my leg and back day. The day prior to, my foods in the off season were higher, and then because I needed to get that food in for the next day, which I knew I was going to be training. So there were little things that I saw that worked better, and I started to pick and choose from all of the amazing stuff that's out here, because it's all great information. It's just that we have to understand how to use it individually.
Absolutely, because everyone, it affects everyone differently, and I think it's about expectations too. You mentioned, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Well, when you open up a book on a particular, subject matter, it's not like the first 5 pages of the book go, okay, so what you need to do is slowly transition into this. They basically say, step 1, here's how you do this. Step 2, here's how you do it. And so, and I also think a lot of it has to do with, the effect of personal recommendations, right? So someone who did it, or someone knows someone who did it, and then it worked for them, so I'm going to do it. But like you said, it's really about, understanding where you fit in the puzzle, right? And it may not work. It may not work. It may not, for many reasons.
And be willing to work at it. That's the other thing, because once if you take the time to want to try and change something, right, that you've never done before, you got to take the time to realize that there's going to be some turbulence. You know, more
Right.
often than not, it's going to be a little rocky getting in and getting
Right.
going. So understand that and give it the time. One of the biggest things I see that plague people, patience. People just don't have
Right.
patience. And
Well,
if
we
you
talk
don't
about this
have
all the time.
patience, you're never going to find out how something really can work for you.
Right.
So patience
Sure.
is a virtue. That's another old one.
Sure.
I'm going to
Sure.
be hitting you with all of these old things. Patience is the virtue. If you
This
have
is
the
the
patience
cliche show.
to put it, if you have the patience to put in, and
Yeah.
then you are aware enough to find out that, hey, I've been butting my head against this wall for like 10, 15 times now. I need to change it. You're going to do better. You're going to do better. But
Right. Absolutely.
you got to have some patience, you know?
We talk about this all the time. We talk about it in training.
Yeah.
Right. We've talked about it with several of our guests.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that and you don't show, we talk about the consistency. We talk about commitment. It has
Right.
everything to do with eating. It has everything to do with training.
Right.
And life in general, right? I mean,
Yeah.
look, the average lifespan is 76 years old or whatever. For 76 years, you're just going through life where you just like, oh, well, I'm consistent. I got up today. Like, that's not right. You need to be consistent in your actions, and you need to be consistent in what it is you're doing. And if you want to change something, like you said, you need to show that consistency through commitment. And you need to be patient. So that's a running theme.
Real quick, I'd just like to touch on real fast what kind of energy you can basically expect from the 3 different types of carbs that we spoke about. We're going to start first with the simple carb, which would be like a fruit. Fruit, for the most part, it's going to give you your quickest. And if you agree with me, great. If you don't agree with me, I understand. Fruit's going to give you your quickest source of energy. It's sweet. The texture of what it is that you typically eat that tends to be sweet, a lot of times it's going to be a little bit softer. So texture, taste will indicate how quick those sugars are going to release into the bloodstream. So something like, let's say you got up in the morning, you had to rush out of the house. You may want to grab that apple, that banana, maybe a smoothie made with some berries, because that's going to hit your system a little bit quicker than if you had a baked potato. A baked potato, it's not going to hit you the same. It's going to be a little bit longer. So rice, pasta, those are things that need to break down a little bit more and require a little bit more time. Something like your fibrous source, which would be celery, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus. Those things are going to take a lot longer, and the sugar release is minimal. Is very,
much more intermittent and a lot less.
Right. Very extremely low. You have to take extreme amounts in order to get the kick. But there are other things that you are getting from those as well, right? They all have proteins. They may not have all the proteins that we're looking for. All possess fiber, right? Different types. You know what I mean? But will digest and release energy at different rates. So an apple is not going to release like a baked potato, right? Sure. It's gonna give you a different time. You know, the release of those sugars into the system are going to be a little bit different. So you want to plan accordingly for what it is you're about to do or what it is you've just done, and what you're trying to accomplish athletically or visually.
Yeah, one thing I would say, I agree with all of your points. One thing I'd say is that fruits do provide vitamins and minerals that I think are somewhat essential. You know, and you can, there is vitamin C in green leafy vegetables, and there's vitamin A, and you know, in various vegetables. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, you know, when you said baked potato, I immediately thought of a pat of butter on a baked potato. Now, when you're eating sweet potato, I would say is probably a better choice if you like sweet potatoes. It used to be called king of the vegetables, you know, for all the vitamins and minerals it offers, plus the fact that it allows the carbohydrates to be released slowly. It's more of a complex type carbohydrate.
Yes.
But one of the things that I used to do is if I was having carbohydrates, I would add a little bit of fat to it. So for instance, if I was having a rice cake, I wouldn't just have a rice cake, I'd put a little peanut butter on it. If I was having a grain bread, I would have maybe peanut butter and a little banana on it, because what it would do is it would slow down the release of the carbs, because you're taking in the combination of carbs and fats. And, you know, it's just another way of kind of going about it.
Absolutely.
But individuals who, may have very low blood sugar or whatever, the banana, the orange is going to be something
Right.
that's going to give them that sugar very quickly, gets into the bloodstream very fast.
Right.
So
Right.
I do agree with you there. And that's great. I mean, it's a good breakdown of carbs and the types of carbs.
Yeah, and just keeping it simple so people can understand instead of going into the whole breakdown of the structure of the carbohydrate.
The carbon and that. No.
Yeah.
One breaks down fast, the other breaks down a lot slower.
It makes it easy to understand. Those are basic bodybuilding education on terms of carbohydrates.
Sure.
Again, before you dub something as, or you hear something is not good, you got to really try it out. You got to really try and experiment, because what you're doing is you're basing what you're taking in on providing an optimal workout. What's going to allow me to move the most amount of iron properly. And if your energy levels are low, you might not be getting the amount of repetitions, nor sets, nor training at the pace that you really need to be training at. And because your ass is dragging, you don't realize that it's what you're putting in. So, the body is a vehicle. Look at all things. Again, it's all about education. Try and educate yourself as best as you can and find out, what can I use that's going to give me the training edge.
Nice. Good call back. And I'll leave you with a cliche: food for fuel, not for fun.
That's it, baby. That's it.
You like that?
I like that. All right,
man. Well, this is great. This is the Training Edge with Dave and Stu. We're glad you guys joined us, or you're watching the recording, and hope that you got some information. If you want to reach out, please reach out to team@ironandsilkfitness.com. That's Iron and Silk Fitness, AND, silkfitness.com, or David@wellnessroundtable.com. Again, that's one word, Wellness Roundtable. For me and for Stu, this has been the Training Edge with Dave and Stu, and we'll see you next week.
Next week, guys, get ready. Bye.